right, Jared Paventi, welcome to the Other 51. Thanks for joining me from your lovely kitchen.
Brian, thank you for having me on. I'm a little jealous of your surroundings for today's call. So
I've spruced up the basement enough to where it looks kind of like an Al Qaeda video, but it's quiet, so you take what you can get. So first of all, this is usually the part of the podcast where the guest and I will nerd out about talking about Hamilton for like 15 minutes. So that's what I want. That's why I wanted to bring up. You are the first guest I've had who is kind of actively an anti-federalist in terms of Hamilton the musical. So, have you just like not listened to it? Not listened to it? Have you listened to it and hated it? What's the genesis of your Hamilton hate?
Well, it's kind of twofold. So, as you know, I'm a contrarian by nature. Mm-hmm. I was raised in Syracuse, New York, and am a Georgetown fan. I kind of it's been a contrarian thing with me for many years. The Hamilton thing, to me, I have no interest in it. Rent, Hamilton, none of them really speak to me. I'm rapping about history. Great. I have zero. I'm getting the thumbs down from my wife as she walks through the kitchen. I really just have zero interest in it. I don't care. Bring me back. You want to reanimate Rodgers and Hammerstein? Now those guys could write a musical. Rodgers and Hart. Let's do it again. Let's bring them back. But
so here's my question, and I don't actually care now that I'm pushing 40. I don't really care if people like what I like. I like it, and that's cool. And knowing you as we've been friends for God Christ, going on 20 years, I kind of know the contrarian aspect of you. But I'm wondering if it weren't for people like me talking about Hamilton incessantly, would that change your mind at all? Would you be more willing to like it if it weren't such a thing?
I don't know. I think that people talked incessantly about The Sopranos, and I really enjoyed The Sopranos.
Okay.
People talked incessantly about Donald Trump. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. But okay, so there's that. I was a Clinton voter. People, we all had our moments of talking incessantly about her. There's just some things that I looked at. I can't. There's some things I can wrap my hands around, and sometimes, musicals really, not really. Those aren't really my space. Yeah, it's just not me.
That's fair.
I look at it and I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's perfectly fine. I'm sure if I watched it, I'd say I was wrong, because I'm always wrong. But I really, truly just have zero interest in it.
My wife refers to it as like the Norah Jones phenomenon, where people are like people don't really love that type of music or don't necessarily love Norah Jones, and it's nothing against Norah Jones, who's fantastic. But when that album was really popular, 15 years ago, and everyone was buying it, few of the people who bought that album are actually fans of that style of music or of Norah Jones. It was just the thing you bought that year because it was the thing you bought that year. So,
and how many people bought her second album?
I did. It was quite good. Nowhere near it. So that's fine. You can be the James Monroe of the podcast. That's good. Without the annexing of South America, unless you want to. Whatever.
Listen, guy had a doctrine. Guy followed the doctrine. Worked for him.
Beautiful. So, onto our extensive topic here of writing, and you kind of have the space as a food and beer writer here in Syracuse and in upstate New York. So, how did you start food writing, and kind of how did that become your thing, your writing topic, your writing area?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I've been since 2003, I've worked for the Alzheimer's Association, as you know, doing public relations and public policy. And it's a fairly weighty topic, Alzheimer's disease, and it's a topic that I think that if you don't find some levity somewhere else, and you think about Alzheimer's disease 24 hours a day, it can really impact you. We always talk about the hope in Alzheimer's disease, but one of the things that I focus on when I'm building a case for public policy or I'm trying to tell a story, I'm looking at the heart wrench. I want the heart-wrenching story to sell to a reporter from a media relations aspect. Or I'm looking to paint a picture that allows me to spin hope. I'm trying to find that statistic that says we spend $283 for on care for every dollar we spend on research or something. I'm looking for that number, and it's not the right number. It was one of the old numbers. I'd have to go back and look at what the number is.
Sure.
So I'd always been looking for the balance, and for a while my balance was teaching. I was adjuncting at a local community college teaching graphic design, and I ended up picking up some English classes because of how my master's degree works. And we could touch on that in a bit. That kind of went away when my daughter was born. I did not want to spend 3 nights a week ignoring my child while paying attention to someone else's children is what it came down to. And what I was putting in time to grade and things of that nature, and what I was getting out in terms of satisfaction and pay was I was losing money, essentially. So I walked away from that. I was doing some freelancing for a content mill that I believe you worked for called Demand Studios.
Oh, those are the glory days. Yes,
those are the glory days when you were trying to. Yeah, we can talk about that place for a while, I suppose. Nothing makes me happier than to see that their business models crashed inward on them. Nothing makes me happier than to see that their IPO had to be pulled because it was gonna the stock sale was going to crash the company, because just of how terrible it was run from the editorial side. Mm-hmm. So that I kind of shut off from that, and I got into. I still wanted to do something, so I started blogging, and I started noodling around in WordPress, quietly doing some recipe writing, trying to figure out what my voice was. And after a month or two, I actually opened it up live to visitors, kind of started promoting it, and it had measured growth. That went for about 5 years, right after my daughter was born, until about this time last year. What happened was this time last year is I was approached by a long-term contact that went back into my high school days. A guy by the name of Steve Karlik, who I think you know. Mm-hmm. Steve is the editor, Steve's the editor of all the entertainment and living portions of Syracuse Media Group's both Syracuse.com and its new sister site, NewYorkUpstate.com or NYUp. So he had approached me and said he had been reading the blog. We've been friends on Facebook, and he said he had an opening for a restaurant reviewer. And he asked me if I was interested, and he said they were also looking at starting up craft beer reviews, and offered me that as well. And he made a point that I think, as any food blogger will, or any blogger of any form will tell you, he made the point of more people will see your post, your restaurant review on a Thursday than will read your blog all year. Mm-hmm. And while I've been given a glimpse of the internal metrics to see, yeah, he's absolutely right. Mm-hmm. And that when you talk about why why anyone writes. It's to be read. It's not for the money, although the money's can't say no. But it's to be read. It's to have what your words that are coming out of you be seen by others, and to know that I'm getting in front of thousands a week as opposed to my hundreds a week. It's gratifying to an extent, and it's on a subject that I truly do enjoy. It's food. It's craft beer. I don't have the. I know I'm going long here, but I don't have the constraint of necessarily reporting. I'm a critic, which, as you know, I have an opinion about everything.
Yeah. So when you started the blog at the beginning, back when Al Dente started, why food? Why was that the thing that got you writing?
Well, I started in the space that you exist in. You start to think about what you can have an opinion on, or what will make your words more readable than someone else's. I could talk into a vacuum about politics. Who wants to read another political blog? I could talk into the vacuum about sports. Really, I mean, who needs another sports blog in their life? I work in public relations, so trying to be a media critic probably does not behoove me. And actually, to kind of piggyback on that, I have a secondary concern. It's that I don't want to do anything with my hobby or with my freelance work that is going to jeopardize my primary job.
Right.
Because no blog was ever going to. I don't care who these people are that say that they run their blogs full time and they have an income from it. That is a 1 in a million blog. That is a 1 in a million situation.
Right. And it's probably one that's been established by now. You're not starting something in the last year and doing that.
Exactly. It took me almost 4 years to get up to 250 or 300 unique visitors a day with my blog. And what this is, it's feast or famine. Some weeks you're knocking it out. You have something that goes somewhat viral. You have something that gets picked up by another blog and you're getting the residual traffic from it. And then there are weeks where you're going, what the seriously, I'm just writing a blog post and the only person reading it is my wife. And maybe you, and because I read yours, vice versa. But, when I was taking a look around, I had those considerations. Where am I good? Where am I doing the best work? Where am I not just going to bloviate, but where do I have some skill? And without jeopardizing or presenting some sort of conflict of interest, or getting myself into a position where I will get in trouble, because let's be honest, eventually I'm going to stick my foot somewhere. I did it once with the blog. And food was one of those things that I love to cook. I grew up in a family where food was more than just nourishment. It was currency. It was conversation. It was the connective tissue. So I thought, okay, here's a space I can work within, and I can try some stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I tell my students too. When you're writing or like job hunting or whatever, you have to. I heard this on another podcast. I think one of the Gimlet ones. The question you ask yourself is, what's my unfair advantage? And I think that's a really good way of kind of looking at a subject, especially in like something like blogging, where like, yeah, am I going to write a sport? I write a sports blog, sort of, but at least am I going to write a general Buffalo Bills blog? Who needs that? Or something like that. I just think that once you kind of find that topic, that's such a huge hurdle you've overcome, and you're like at least somewhat getting somewhere to having a blog you're proud of, whether it's successful or not. As I found, is dumb luck, basically.
Well, and and define success. I would tell you that Al Dente. The blog, which for anyone who wants to visit, it's still there. It's blogaldente.com. It's still out there. my biggest post, and it still draws a ton of traffic, was the 82 things that make Syracuse a great food town. Mm-hmm. That was as viral as it got. So, I define that as a successful post. My blog was never sucked up into the Martha Stewart blogdom or blog her or these other universes of blogs that exist out there, partially because there were maybe 4 or 5 men writing a food blog, and there's really not a network to support that. Mm-hmm. There's no blog him because, well, we are the male hegemony that's ruining everything. This what we need, another network to support us. Ha, ha, ha. Sarcasm. But does the success of a food blog, do you call it successful if the local paper calls you up and says, hey, we want you to review restaurants for us?
Yeah.
I guess it's successful.
Yeah. And it's so hard. Like especially, and this from the blogging, like it can be such a grind to try to turn it into something where, because really the only way you can make money aside from like sponsorships or network is through ad traffic. And, to do that is, I tried it for a week and I'm like, I can't do this. I'm putting out crap. I'm just like linking to something that's on Twitter and trying to like get some traffic off of it. And it was one of those things where I literally like, I felt awful doing it. I'm like, I'm not good. This is not worth my time. This is not worth trying to do that. And, like I got lucky that one time Deadspin picked up it was a Patrick Kane thing, and like it blew up, and I'm like, and that was really a come to Jesus moment for my blog, because I'm like, if I want to make any money off of that, I need like that to happen once a week or like 2 times a week. I'm like, and that was luck. That was Bomani Jones happening to retweet it one morning because he saw it on Twitter at 7:30, and we're off to the races. So, and it's such a lightning at a bottle. It was such dumb luck to try to capture something like that.
Well, and exactly, when you think about, you have to do that daily in order to make any semblance of income off of it, which you got other things to do. But so that's where, like you said, what's your unfair advantage? Your space is not sports. Your space is sports from an academic's perspective, and looking at it from that social theory that academics are supposed to look at things from. Eventually, mine turned from, it was still general food, but it turned more towards Central New York food and the local purveyors. And that's what allowed me to build a bit of the network where I got to meet people, because anyone can write a recipe blog. But when you can start featuring and talking about things that you and I and our neighbors can just reach out and touch, it brings a whole new dimension to it. And that's where you see some of the pickup from. I think about even how we went to school. We both went through the same journalism program at St. Bonaventure. But one thing sticks in my head is that the journalism programs that are out there, including the one you teach in, there's very few of them have specialization to really hone in on a topic. And something I remember going to the one of the Sundays that you could go visit the campus, and you'd go to different rooms and you'd meet with the departments, and I sat in the poli-sci room with Dr. Moore. Jim Moore is a retired prof from Bonaventure, and we were chatting, and I had mentioned that I was planning to major in journalism, but I wanted to check this out, and he told me that was the worst decision I could make. And at the time, I thought that this was a department sell, but he said, the great journalists don't major in journalism. They take the courses, they make double major, but he said, Dan Barry, which was one of the Pulitzer Prize winners that came through St. Bonaventure, was either a history or like a theology major, but he majored in journalism. So, it's broadening. And I keep thinking that if I wanted to be a food journalist, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to do 3 years at the Culinary Institute of America, then go off and do a 4-year degree.
Well, and that Michael Ruhlman already did that. So now, if you do that, are you Michael Ruhlman light? Are you Michael Ruhlman 2.0?
Right.
So that it gets me to a couple of things I wanted to get to, but who are the food writers that you really kind of look up to and like? I mean, Ruhlman, I don't write about food, but I've started reading a lot of his books and his blog, and I like him a lot. So who do you like in this space?
Mm-hmm. Michael Ruhlman's certainly. I am a strong follower of a guy named Kenji Lopez Alt from Serious Eats. He writes the food lab column. He just published a cookbook last year that won the Beard Award for the James Beard Award for the cookbook of the year. And he really takes a scientific approach to cooking. He's taken me down into rabbit holes of sous vide, the water circulators. I own one of them because of him. I own a pressure cooker because of him. I buy my gadgets because he says so. The one thing that he has that I don't have is a blowtorch, simply as a matter of I know what'll happen. I forgot what my wife says. I know what'll happen the first time I go to torch a steak in my kitchen that just came out of the water bath. I know it'll go up and it's done. The kitchen will go up in flames.
So you're bringing that on vacation this year is what's happening.
Match. So I mean, I do follow that pretty closely, and I mean down to following him on Reddit because he does his stuff for the site. He's got Twitter, but he does a lot of work on Reddit. And what I love about him is on Twitter and on Reddit, he's very accessible. You have a question, you post it, and he reaches right back out and answers.
That's cool.
And it's very much that two-way with him. I think in terms of beer, I do enjoy Lou Bryson, who's a alcohol writer. He's written about beer. Right now he's writing about bourbon and whiskey, but he does a lot of good work. I'm trying to think who else I read. There's a guy in Rochester actually named Will Cleveland.
Oh yeah,
for the DNC, and he's really doing some cool stuff out there. He's really built a network out of the paper where basically he's a crime reporter, but he's writing about beer and really I think building a strong following there in terms of what he's doing. And then of course so I guess outside of my own daily reading, but that in this space that's where I tend to gravitate.
You mentioned anyone can write a recipe blog. I was thinking about this the other day when I was making something for dinner. I don't know what it was. It's something basic. But I'm like, a recipe to me seems like something that would be really, it sounds really easy to write. But when I started thinking through like how you would do a recipe, like it's one of those things that's probably harder than it seems at first glance. So how did you write, when you wrote recipes, how did you do that? Like what was the process for writing a recipe?
Well, particularly for the stuff that I was writing originally, it was. I've found that my memory isn't as strong as I'd hoped it would be when I first started doing this. So I would make something, and I'd go to sit down and write about it, and realize, dumbass, why didn't you write any of this stuff down? And then I found that the notepad would just get in the way. So what I did is, to be honest with you, I would take photos of a lot of my measures.
Okay.
So if I was measuring olive oil, and rather than just doing the pour that I normally do, which is about a tablespoon, I would measure it out, take a photo, and when I'd sit back down later, I would know which ones were my photos that I wanted to accompany the recipe, and which ones were there for my reference. Okay. So if I had to weigh something, I would take a picture of whatever the scale said, because you have to get all the measures correct. You have to get all of the temperatures and times correct. And one of the things that I remember, and it was a story that came out around the same time that came out with the Dinosaur Barbecue, which is a place you and I have eaten. It's grown into a regional chain of barbecue restaurants, but it started in Syracuse, and God, I want to say in the late 90s, early 2000s, they published a cookbook. And one of the things that stuck out is that the writer who was working with the founder of the Dinosaur, he never wrote any of his recipes down. He was doing them all by feel, all out of the back of his head. And she's sitting there trying to write down everything he's measuring and make sure that she catches everything, so that way they can write a cookbook. And that keeps coming back to me as I got further and further into it. I needed to make sure I was documenting the hell out of everything. Mm-hmm. So those are on the ones that I was originating. If I was a recipe isn't necessarily yours. I mean, I can write a recipe tomorrow for spaghetti with meatballs, but how do you can't copyright that? That's not yours. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can come up with your own list of ingredients, how you make your own process for creating a sauce, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's about, so sometimes you're out there, you're adapting a recipe. You're taking that recipe from Kenji Lopez Alt, and you're putting your own spin on it. So if you're making a chicken dish, but you're seeing that he's using a type of pepper or a type of vegetable that you can't get access to, and you substitute, say spinach for escarole or something like that. Mm-hmm. You're putting your spin on it, and then it's about not, you have to credit that, but as adapting a recipe. And that's what you'll find, I think a lot of food bloggers do, is you do have some that write and develop their own recipes, but you'll find that 70 to 80% of them out there are adapting the work of someone else. And most writers, and I know from following him on Twitter, I know that Kenji accepts that. It's when people rip it off and don't give the credit, where he will call it out on Twitter and just demonize the hell out of your space because really and truthfully, that's something that when he develops a recipe, because of the way he does it, he just doesn't develop a recipe. So he's going in and trying to figure out the 6 different best ways of cooking a hamburger. Mm-hmm. And he's testing them, and he's photographing it, and he's doing taste tests and this and that. So that is a week's worth of work that, anyone else can just come by and rip off. Right. And yes, there's intellectual property, but at the same time, there's, it's all out there. Mm-hmm. And you want to, as a creator, hope that if someone were to borrow something of yours, they would credit you back, particularly if it ever got, more traffic than you would. But,
So I know you've been doing a lot. I miss your food, the blog, by the way, because I would. We cooked at least something off of your blog at least once a month, either an old one or a current one, and yeah. So I hope it comes back at some point. But I know you're doing the restaurant reviews now and the beer reviews now. So when you go out to eat professionally, or you have beer professionally, what are you looking for? Like when you're at a restaurant, what are you taking in? How do you eat out like a food critic?
Well, it starts with a little bit of research. So I'm looking at that menu before I walk in the door. I try to minimize my surprises because I don't want to get distracted by something. Okay. I'll listen to the specials, but 99% of the time I'm not ordering a special. I'm ordering off the menu because I want to showcase what, on the Thursday when it runs, if someone's going to decide to go there on Friday, I want them to be able to order what I've ordered. So a special, unless it just sounds really good. And I've done it once and it worked out fine for me. But I look at it as I try to do as much ahead of time in terms of research. I I do a little bit of reading. I try not to do any reading about what other people are saying. So I'll stay off of the TripAdvisors and the Yelps.
Okay.
Because I want to go in there without any preconceived notions about the place. So when I go in there, I go in and we always try to have a game plan before we go in. Usually it's my wife and I that go, and we go in there knowing basically that we're each going to order an app. We're each going to order an entree. And usually when it comes to an entree, we're ordering off of different portions of the menu. So one of us is going to one of us may order a pasta, the other may order a meat dish. We went to La Paria in Oswego. We saw the ones that were marked. We asked the waitress what is the chef's, not necessarily the chef's specialty, but what's he the most proudest of.
Okay.
She pointed out a couple things, so we ordered those, because if you're telling me that that's what the kitchen looks to as its finest work, then let's try it. I'm not just going to go to a seafood place and order the chicken, because yes, it could be their worst dish, but at the same time, I want something that people are going to order. So, when I'm looking at a menu, I'm trying to come up with that. If I'm looking at a place like, we went to a Pizza Originale, which is the pizza place that just opened up across from the Dinosaur, and we went there early, right after it opened, and we ended up ordering a ton of food in the process between the two of us. And so we're trying to showcase the menu, a little bit of everything, without it being so obvious at the same time, because there are ways to give it away, which is why my headshot is my headshot's actually a photo my daughter took of me with my SLR. And because she's really handy with the camera, she got from the bridge of my nose to my hairline. So that's what I use, because I don't want to give my face away. I make my reservations under a different name. The only time my name ever comes up is when I hand someone my card to pay. But so I try to go in there, and the most important thing is going in without any preconceived notions of what's going to happen. Okay. And to take what's going on when you get there.
And how much does
I'm ordering? Like I said, I'm trying to. No. Like I said, I'm trying to order without making it tell like I'm trying everything out. So
right. I was wondering how much both the audience you're writing for and kind of like the aesthetic of the restaurant matters too. Like I know you did the place right around the corner from you recently as a review, and you're not going to go into that with the same mindset as you would when you were going to Tom Colicchio's place or Bobby Flay's places that you went to in New York a couple of summers ago. So I mean, how much does that, like what the restaurant's trying to be, impact how you judge them?
Yeah, no, certainly. And I think it's about expectations. So for instance, last Thursday I had reviewed the Copper Top Tavern in Syracuse, which is your run-of-the-mill casual dining, a little towards the upscale. I'd been there before. I knew exactly what to expect. And it's about managing expectations. We on the flip side of that, we went to a place in Utica called the Tailor and the Cook. And it's an upscale restaurant. I would say it's fine dining. You look at the menu, you get an idea of the price points, you get an idea of the ingredients they're using, and you start to build the picture of what type of restaurant it is. Again, without trying to get too many preconceived notions under your belt. But I think you go in there with the expectation you're going to get a higher caliber of cooking, a higher caliber of food than you would had you gone to the neighborhood bar and grill around the corner from your house, which is perfectly fine. But and you'll catch me at one of those more often than you'll catch me at the fine dining place, simply as a matter of well, I can't afford to eat like that all the time. But there are people out there who can.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to, you do have to run the gamut of establishments. My partner on the restaurant reviews went from a place called the Horn Dorset, just north of Cooperstown, where dinner for her and her husband, I want to say, crested $200. And it's a wonderful restaurant. It's one of the gems of upstate New York. And then I want to say the next two restaurants after that, she ate with plastic silverware because of the types of restaurants she was going to. So, particularly in a community like Syracuse, you have to serve a readership that goes from Horn Dorset all the way down to the Filipino restaurant on the ride.
Right.
So
it's kind of like I want to say it was Roger Ebert who once they were asking about reviewing movies, and I think I'm probably getting this wrong, but he like gave a Garfield movie a good review, like one of the Jennifer Love Hewitt Garfield movies, and basically his idea is you have to review the movie for what it's trying to be, and not like
Absolutely.
you not hold it up to like The Godfather or Goodfellas by comparison. I imagine it's the same thing with restaurants. You have to kind of
absolutely.
go with what it's trying to be, as opposed to like Tom Colicchio's restaurant is you judge every meal based on that. You judge Rudy's and Oswego based off of that.
Right. Well, because what you're doing with a restaurant is you're capturing a moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm judging you on a night where everything could go wrong or everything could go right.
Mm-hmm.
It's different to me, it's different when I'm looking at a beer, because that's a product that is being sold over the counter at Wegmans, at a bar, at a bottle shop, at a gas station. So when I'm sitting down to taste a beer, I am going to hold it up potentially against another. If I'm drinking an IPA, I'm thinking about other IPAs I've drank, and is it as good as, does it taste like?
Sure.
Because especially there, when you get into these smaller breweries, you want to give a point of reference to a person. If you drink a pale ale that tastes like a Sierra Nevada, well, a lot more people have had a Sierra Nevada pale ale than may have had a pale ale from a brewery up in the Adirondacks. So
mm-hmm.
I am going to do it that way, but because that's not a snapshot in time, that's your recipe that you're bottling and selling.
Right.
Whereas that restaurant, that's really and truly how they were that night.
Mm-hmm. So what's the best thing you've read lately?
Best thing I've read lately? I did. I've been reading a lot. What I usually do is I load up a bunch of stuff on my iPad and my reading list from long form
mm-hmm.
Each week, and I try to work through that by the end of the week. Best thing I've read lately. There's a Texas Monthly
mm-hmm. does
a phenomenal job of long-form journalism.
While you're looking for it, their digital stuff is great too. I use them as an example in class, in my online journalism classes, of just really, you don't know, they're not widely known, but they're fantastic. So.
Mm-hmm. The best thing I read lately is actually not out of Texas Monthly, although there's another one. It would probably be two. It's out of D Magazine, Dallas Magazine. It's called The Day Kennedy Died.
Okay.
It's an interview with Dr. Robert McClelland, who was the trauma surgeon on call on the day Kennedy was killed in Dallas.
Nice.
The other one I would point you to in Texas Monthly, once it reloads here, it's called the True Story of Gabriel Cardona. It's about a kid in South Texas who had his first brush with the law and ended up becoming a drug lord. And it's a true story. The true story of how one Laredo boy went from high school dropout to hitman. So really looking at these longer form crime pieces, and what Texas Monthly has done over the years, and what D Magazine does is in the journalism and the reporting that they're doing is really, really strong.
Yeah. Yeah, I can.
It bugs me because it's Texas.
Right. They have barbecue. That's enough for that state. I can recommend. It's making the rounds on Twitter and Facebook, and it should be came out today. The Ta-Nehisi Coates yes. Obama. It's long. It's an investment, but it's exactly as good as you expect Ta-Nehisi Coates on Obama to be. Especially Obama, you could tell he was reporting it over several months, and it was almost like setting up as a valedictory of Obama, expecting Hillary to win, and then of course, we made America great again, and so now it kind of takes that hard turn near the end. But really, it's a perfect match of writer and subject, and I love reading how long sections of how Obama talks, because you can just tell the kind of guy he is and the kind of thinker he is, and Coates is just such a brilliant writer. So I know I'm going out on a limb and recommending something like that, but it's really good.
Really? You know what else I would throw out there, and it's timely ish, is I would go to Google, I would type in Dan Levitard, Miami Herald, Cuba.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And go and search there. You're going to pop up with 2 or 3 stories. One of them was, and they're all written, they're columns. One of them was written after Jose Fernandez's death. Mm-hmm. And I was actually the morning after Jose Fernandez, it was announced that he died. I actually was driving to a Bills game, and I was listening to ESPN radio. On my way out, I had to go review all the food at New Era Field. It was a long home, but I'm listening to Dan Levitard cry on SportsCenter because he was the one who told his mother about his death, and he talks about it from the perspective of is that this is whatever the circumstances around Jose Fernandez's death. People rallied, the Cubans in Miami rallied around Jose Fernandez because he had such joy for the sport, and he brought that community together. Mm-hmm. And so there's a piece around the time where Obama goes to the Major League Baseball game that they played in Cuba. Mm-hmm. And then there's another one where he talks about his father's immigration to the United States, and they're all poignant, and they really show. I never liked Dan Levitard when he would fill in on Pardon the Interruption, but I had a whole new perspective on him as a journalist, not a sports journalist, but just as a storyteller. Mm-hmm. So they're all 3 are very good. They're all timely.
Yeah, when the morning after Castro died, or they announced that Castro died, I looked on the Herald and on ESPN to see if he had written about that, because that experience of it. So really quick, I'll get you out of here on best thing you've drank and eaten recently.
Best thing I ate recently, I would go back to that Ligurian fish stew at La Paria was just otherworldly. So I would go back there more often if it was less than an hour from my house. So that's best thing I've eaten recently. Best thing I've drank recently, I can't. I'm going to go to my app. I'm going to go to Untappd for a second because nothing's really stuck out in my head. It's been kind of sad lately. I just trying to think. I had, last night I had a Sweet Baby Jesus. It was the first time I had a Sweet Baby Jesus, the chocolate peanut butter porter by Dew Claw Brewing Company. It was really, really good. Yep. A couple nights ago I had a Narragansett coffee milk stout, which is it's really good. Can't drink more than one at a time, but in terms of that sort of thing. You know what? Best thing I've had recently, I forgot about this. Last week I was I had a magnetic compass by Grimm Artisanal Ales, and Grimm beers are very rare to find, and when you find one, you drink it because they just make such great beer.
Cool. All right. Well, Jared Paventi, thanks for joining us. This was fun.
Happy to.